Right. Yeah, like I said today, it will be like a very, very like quick, gentle introduction to R, but I mainly kind of to walk you through, I wanted to walk you through how the assignments are going to work for R and for doing the data analysis. So each unit is composed of three sort of sections, three parts. Part one is what you're doing this week, which is kind of readings and discussion, just to get some background context and some additional information. We're using a really somewhat old, but still really solid course text on social network analysis and education. So that's going to give you a lot of good background. Plus, there's an opportunity during that first week to locate some articles of interest specific to a field that you kind of care about and are looking towards potentially applying network analysis for your own independent analysis. In week 2 of each unit, there's going to be a sort of guided walkthrough where I take you through a research study that has used network analysis and kind of break it down for you, at least certain aspects of it, on how you would do these types of things and this type of analysis and what the process looks like using R and RStudio. And then the third week of each unit, you'll be asked to do a very, very simple sort of independent analysis, applying the skills that you acquired from the previous week through the guided walkthrough. So for example, for unit 1, what we're going to focus on is just putting together a basic network visualization, which by now from the readings you probably know is called a sociogram. So it's that little hairball plot that looks like a cat coughed up something. But if you put those together well, it can actually communicate important information. So let's see. Forgive me, this is new too. I'm trying out RStudio Cloud for the first time that I hope is going to solve some issues that we've experienced in the past with different versions of packages, and also for those new to R to kind of provide a very gentle, easy introduction to using R and RStudio. If you haven't read chapter 5 and 6 from Data Science and Education Using R, which is free online, definitely recommend going back and reading those chapters. So I'm going to go back. You should have received an invite or a link in an announcement this morning for signing up for RStudio Cloud. So let me go ahead and go to a course. And I'm going to get that link for you, and I'm going to put it in the chat window here so you can click on it. Go back to news and announcements, optional meetup. And this really, really long link here, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put this in the chat for you. There we go. And if you click on it, it should take you, probably if you haven't signed up for RStudio Cloud yet, directions in the syllabus, it'll ask you to sign up for RStudio Cloud. So let me log out of here to show you what you'll see. So you'll see something like this. You'll probably be required to do a sign up for RStudio Cloud. Okay, I think you've actually done this already because you asked about free versus organization. The free account actually gets you really, really far, and you can do a lot with just the free account. And then you'll go ahead and sign up. And if you want to go the easy route, you can just sign up with your NC State Google ID. I actually have signed up with my GitHub account where I store all of this stuff online to make use of GitHub a little bit easier. And then once you are signed up, here, I'm going to go ahead and just log in. And forgive me, but you two are kind of my guinea pigs on this. So if we encounter some issues, help me troubleshoot them. So next time around, we can figure those things out faster. So I'm going to go ahead and log into GitHub. And there we go. You can see I have a ton of projects, a ton of workspaces. You should have a link once you sign up that takes you to ECI 589 SNA and education. And then Rob, are you seeing this page already? Excellent. It should be, you should be able to see assignment. So what's going to happen is I've created a R project. Again, that's kind of described what R projects are in chapter 5 and 6 of Data Science and Education Using R. An R project is, think of it as like a folder system for collecting all of this stuff for your analysis, for your data wrangling, and for your reporting as well. So think of it as like a file directory or a file system. That's kind of what our project is, but it saves all of your information, saves your history of your work, saves a bunch of stuff for you, and it actually creates a specific file called an R project file. The nice thing about RStudio Cloud is going back here, you will actually, hey, awesome, Rob, I see your project already. You will also later on for your independent analysis, create new projects that you'll set up just for your own independent analysis. And what that will do is automatically set up a project for you. And it'll just be called project.rproject. So if you are logged in already, you should see something that looks exactly like this, basically. So far, so good.
Should I be seeing just the basic frames or some of this content, like the that Markdown document that you've got there?
Very good question. Thanks, Rob. I'm guessing you're probably not seeing that right now. So first thing we need to do is go ahead and open that up. You'll see a file system down here in this pane. So RStudio has 4 panes, basically. This pane contains all your files, any plots that you make, all the packages that we'll be working with this semester. Packages contain useful functions for doing data cleaning, doing data analysis. So you only have to do a couple lines of code and you don't have to recreate everything from scratch. And then also this viewer pane, which we'll look at in just a little bit as well for viewing the output before you share it with somebody. This pane right here is the environment pane. Once you're working in R and creating things like new data sets that have been derived from other data sets, creating things like model outputs or graphs or charts or things like that, the actual objects and files, those will show up here, and we'll see that in just a little bit. This part right here, this is your console. So if you were not using RStudio Cloud or RStudio at all, if you were just using base R, and you can do everything just in base R, what you'd mostly see is just this console over here. And this is where you can type in specific lines of code. So for example, I could use R as a calculator if I wanted to and say 4 plus 4, and then hit enter, and it's going to run it just like a calculator would. I can create objects. Let's say I wanted to create an object called name, and I wanted to assign my name to it. And then when I hit enter, we can see up in an environment here, I've just created a new object called name that contains a string, which is just a bunch of characters that are all tied together called Sean Kellogg. So that's your console. Where we're going to be doing most of our work is actually going to be up here in what's called the source pane. And this contains all the files that you'll be working on. Tons of different file types that you can create in R. You can create a script. So that's what's up here. If all you want to do is basically write code and run code, you can do that up here. So 4 plus 4. And let's say I wanted to store it as sum. I would have this little pipe operator over here. I'm sorry, not a pipe operator, an assignment operator. This thing is what you use to, again, this is kind of all described in chapter 5 and 6 of data science and education. This is used to basically assign something to an object or variable in R. So we can just use that thing later. So if I were to run this, it does the same thing that I did down here. But it saves what I typed up in this little file. So this is like my little script file. And also you can see that it stored the value. So 4 plus 4, and it stored it right here. So if I ever wanted to later, I could say, hey, let's use sum, and let's add sum plus sum and see what happens. What do you think is going to happen when I do this?
It should pop 16 down in the console and in the environment.
Let's see. There we go. Sum plus sum. Oh, 4 plus 4. That's interesting. Oh yeah, because 8 plus 8. I'm sorry. I was thinking for some reason I was thinking it was going to have 8 again, but 8 is what's actually stored in our sum. Yep. Kate, you got it. And then it stored it up there, and we could store that too if we wanted to. I'm just being silly now, but sum of sums. And we could run that and we store it, and then we could type it again. So that's the kind of 4 panes. Everything that we're doing our work up here, this is kind of like the calculator down here that runs everything for us. This is our environment over here where it stores all the objects that we created. And this is our file system / packages / help / other things. Let me pause for 1 second because my dog needs to go out. There we go. Sorry about that. There's a cat somewhere too. And fortunately, kids are back in school, so there's not any kids running around because that was crazy for an entire year.
How long though?
What's that?
For how long are they back in school before?
Yeah, for like 2 more weeks. And then craziness ensues, and then they kind of go feral over the summer.
Our kids are real feral, really feral. I like it though, actually. I kind of like it. I feel like they're getting survival skills.
Yeah, survival skills. It's like, go make yourself lunch. You can do it.
Yeah. It
my
might not
daughter,
be pirate booty, but that's fine.
my daughter, as an aside, actually, she's a 5th grader, and she has become a pretty good baker this past year. And even my son has learned to cook spaghetti and meatballs and grilled cheese, and he's in 3rd grade.
That's awesome.
And he's a pro with the microwave now too. Yeah.
He's ready for college.
Yeah, he's ready for college. Just teach him to cook some ramen and he'll get through all 4 years.
Order a pizza. Teach him how to order a pizza.
So that's the kind of layout of R. But Rob, back to your question, should you be seeing what I was showing? Probably not seeing that. So let's go ahead and pull that up. I'm not going to save any of these scripts. Don't save. And I'm going to get rid of this script. Don't need that. And that has shrunk now. Like I said, tons of different file types that you can create in RStudio. We're going to be using a file type called R notebook, which is actually just a R Markdown document that lets you preview it before you publish it. R notebook's pretty nice to have some other features. But again, it's really just an R Markdown document with some different stuff. You don't have to know all this stuff yet. You'll kind of learn it over the course of the semester. But Rob, go ahead in your file pane. You'll want to open up a document down in your files. It says unit 0 walkthrough.rmd, and .rmd stands for R Markdown. And if you click on that, it should open up in your pane. And you should see something like this. All this stuff up here, ignore it. That's kind of like metadata, and that just describes the file and provides some information for the file when you actually preview it. And if you were to click preview of this file, oh, pop-up blocker, there we go. And
Dr. Kellogg, so when I click on files, maybe I misheard, but when I click on files, the only 2 things that I see are laser cycle PNG and project export PNG.
That was the case for me too. You're inside the image folder and need to go up 1 level.
Okay.
oh, thanks, you two. Yeah, Kate, follow me. So when I last saved this, I must have actually been, I was in the image folder because I was adding a new PNG file. So yeah, if you click on project, it'll take you back up to the head of the directory, like the original file folder. Yeah, thanks, Rob.
And then that's all I need to do is just go into the project.
Yep, click on this R Markdown thing, and you should have the guided walkthrough that we'll be going through today. In the second week of each unit, you're going to get a file that looks just like this that'll take you through and give you background information and teach you about some of the code we'll be using and ask you to practice some of the code, and there'll be some activities for you to do. It's kind of like an interactive textbook, basically. Interactive textbook that's being written on the fly too. So it's not going to be the most proofread textbook.
So sorry. So I went back to the project list, and then what do I click on?
Yep, you're doing good. Do you see where my little pointer is? Unit 0 walkthrough.rmd. That'll be our R Markdown file. And go ahead and click on that. There are 2 views for this. You should see the nice attractive view. This is what it's going to look like when we turn this into a web page or a PDF file, or we can turn it into a number of different things. If you don't see this, you might see, for example, the actual Markdown language. This is kind of like a very basic sort of scripting language for including things like headers, which you would use hashtags for, including things like bolding font and things like that. But RStudio Cloud and RStudio now has a preview mode, which is really nice. So you should be looking at it through the preview mode. But if you're interested in seeing like how these things are made in terms of headers and backgrounds and bolding and all the formatting stuff, you can see that back here. And it's the Markdown language, I think, is universal. So you can use it for like WordPress sites and other things like that. But again, pretty basic, but we're going to use it in visual mode, which is a nicer way to look at this. And let me let the dog in, sorry. All right, so far so good. Also, too, you can do these things independently too. So if you'd rather work at your own pace, I will not be offended if you wanted to just kind of log off and do it yourself. But I'm going to kind of walk you through this right now. So just a little bit of background. Like I said, what we are going to be doing is second week of each unit, you're going to have a guided walkthrough that's going to provide some context about some literature. We're going to try to replicate a very basic component of a study. You're going to learn some code. You're going to learn some new functions. You're going to learn some new packages. And by the end of unit 1, we're going to learn how to use R to make a somewhat attractive network visualization. This document's divided into 4 sections. Every walkthrough that we're going to do for this entire course is going to be divided into the same sections. Section 1 is going to focus on just the background context that you need for the analysis that we're going to be doing. It's also going to teach you some basics like loading certain packages, what those packages contain, useful functions that we'll be using, and also some other basic stuff too. In the wrangle section for each unit, we are going to be focused on data cleaning, data merging, data transformation, basically everything we need to do to get our data ready for analysis. In this course, we will have some kind of nice, clean data sets to use, but later down the road, you're going to have some data sets, especially if you signed up for a Twitter developer account, where you can pull some data from Twitter that you'll need to do some wrangling with. In the explore section for each unit, we're going to basically be covering different ways to describe our data and look at our data. This could be through descriptive statistics, like just calculating mean, or looking at just basic counts for things like how many people are in our network, what's the average number of people that others are connected to, how many messages were sent out, like what's the density of our network, things like that. But a big part of the explore section will be data visualization. So we can kind of look at our data and gather some insight from our data that's harder to do just from doing like calculations and figuring out basic descriptives. For modeling, to be perfectly honest, we're on a summer session and it's shorter. So we're 1 unit short this semester. I did not want to try to cram a full course into 10 weeks. So the modeling section will talk about a little bit in each unit, but we will not be doing the exponential random graph modeling that we would normally do at the far end of a course. But I will introduce you to that. And to be perfectly honest, it has very specific use cases, and it's not going to be the most useful technique anyways. And then let's see, we'll be doing this every week too. For your independent analysis, you'll be creating a very basic presentation or a very basic R Markdown document that we're going to do today to kind of walk us through a very simple analysis that you did, either using a data set that I provide you to play with, or also just using a data set of your own choosing too. For network data, it's a little bit trickier getting your own data because there's not a ton of freely available network data sets out there, although it is growing. But within education, you're not going to find as many freely available data sets. We'll explore one next week that I've made available through British Journal of Educational Technology, and that is also available on open data sharing site too. Twitter is actually a really good source of data, especially for network analysis. So if you do have a Twitter account, and if you're interested in using Twitter data, it's really, really easy to set up a Twitter developer account using a student account. They have accounts specifically for students, and we'll walk through in Unit 2 pulling some Twitter data. We actually used Twitter data quite a bit last semester for doing some text mining too. So that's really fun. It's easy to set up an account, and I definitely encourage you to do that. Let's see, we are going to be using this framework. Actually comes from a book that we introduced in the first section of this certificate program called An Introduction to Learning Analytics. The book is called Learning Analytics Go to School. It's free from the NC State Library. They have free online versions of it. A really good book. It's not R focused, it's software agnostic. So it really talks more about the applications of learning analytics in educational context. But it does kind of introduce the sort of workflow or cycle for the process of doing just general data analysis, but also learning analytics specifically. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to be introduced to what's called a code chunk. So you saw a little bit earlier, I had a little R script where I can just go ahead and write code. This code chunk is basically a tiny little R script that's built into this document. And this allows you to run code. So I can write code and I can run code within my document, which is really nice for when I want to share out an analysis, but I also want to include my code in the analysis so other people can reproduce what I've done. So to run the code in a code chunk, you're going to go ahead and click this little green arrow, and that will run it for you. So go ahead and click that, and you should see a picture of the laser cycle, which was in that image folder. And did that work okay on your end?
So this is in the organization section, right?
It is under organization, yep. And when you get underneath the explanation for the, oh, ignore that laser cycle. That's actually just a data intensive workflow cycle. We're using this also for a Learning Analytics and STEM Education Research Institute that we're running this summer too. And you should see a code chunk that looks just like this. And if you click the green arrow, it's going to run that code for you.
I don't really have a green arrow.
Oh, interesting.
Do you, Rob?
Yeah, I had an arrow.
Hmm.
Kate, I'm kind of curious. Let's see.
Let me see. I opened up the kind of nicer view in a separate window. I don't know if that's why it's doing it. So let me go back to my browser window.
Oh, Kate, did you open up? You might have opened up the HTML file, which is basically a web page, and that's what we're going to make at the end of this. And there's two files in there. They're both called Unit 0 walkthrough. One ends with .rmd and the other one ends in .html. You want to click the one that says .rmd.
Yeah, that's the one I'm in, and it came up. It came up with not the sort of document view. It's like.
Oh, does it look like this?
Yes, it looks like that. And then I tried to go to preview to see it in the other format, and that opened a separate window.
Ah, okay. I should have explained this. This is my fault. Kate, can you follow my cursor right now?
Yes.
There's a little button up here that lets you switch over to the nice visual mode.
Okay.
And if you click that button, it looks like a little A, like or the tip of a pencil. If you click on that, it should take you into the document with a nice view. And you know, I'm going to stop sharing. And Kate, do you mind sharing your screen?
Sure. Yeah, I'm having a little trouble because I'm trying to sort of toggle back and forth between the Zoom screen and
yeah.
screen. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Oh yeah. You know what? I think you actually exile that RStudio Cloud tab so you can make this a little bit bigger. Right now it's pretty crunched. So go up to where there's a big RStudio Cloud in the left corner underneath your bookmark bar. Yeah, get rid of that sidebar and that might expand it a little. There we go, much better. Now you got a little bit more breathing room. And go over to your document that you opened up with your script. Yep, doing great. And then up there next to the little run arrow, there's a little A, and click on that. And it should take you to the prettier version of that document. And yep, you want to use visual mode. And excellent, doing great so far. So scroll down to the organization section and you should be able to see that little run button now. Scroll, scroll, scroll. And there you go, yep. That's the one. And that is going to run your code. So if you scroll down, you should be able to see that little image now.
Okay, great.
All right, perfect. And that image is actually in that IMG image folder. So that's where that's coming from. And there's easier ways to insert the image in a document, which we'll learn a little bit later on. You can actually just use the toolbar up here. So this is basically like a WYSIWYG editor now. So what you see is what you get editor. So everything that you want to click and type, you'll see it kind of as an output. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen now. All right. So there's an oh, go ahead, Rob.
Where that little knitter code chunk points to the laser cycle image. It's saying img / laser cycle. Is somewhere in here defined what the home directory is or something from which those relative paths are defined? Or I read the education R book and it was talking about a method of using like here to define where you are in the folder structure or something. So I'm just wondering,
you can do that
here somewhere, or
you can do that. The nice thing about RStudio Cloud and the project that it sets up is the project itself is the home directory, and you don't even have to worry about directories at all. So this is saying, look in your home directory. And look in the image folder, and this is basically just the file path to your laser cycle image. This is important later on because we're going to be reading in data and we want to make sure we indicate the correct file path. But having your project set up in RStudio Cloud or in a desktop, it's fine to use desktop as well, especially if you're using if I click up here, an actual RStudio project. Sorry, oh goodness. Oh yeah, sorry, I'd go up here and I'd create a new file. Oh, sorry, create a new project. Oh, that's interesting. I'm not in desktop, so it's not showing me the option to create a project because in RStudio Cloud, everything is a project. So I don't even have that option. But Rob, back to your question, good question. Yeah, that's the file path. We're not going to use here or the other things because in cloud, this kind of simplifies that process anyways, but you are welcome to use it. And in most cases, we're never going to go more than one folder deep. We'll usually have a folder for our data, folder for any images that you might want to include in a document or a presentation. And then maybe a subfolder, but probably not. So most file paths are going to be very simple. If you wanted to keep this really simple, we actually could have just included some data that we're going to be using. We just could have included in the home directory, and then you never have to deal with any file directories at all.
Okay, so every project is its own folder structure.
Yeah.
But do your packages carry over across your projects?
They sure do, yes. Well, if you're on the same machine, but so for example, here, let me show you an example. So let's say, Rob, you wanted to use this in the desktop. You can actually just export this project. And then when you export it, it's going to create like a zip file and a directory. And then you open that up. You can plop that anywhere. You could put it in your Google Drive. You could keep it on your desktop. You could keep it in the downloads folder. And then when you open that up, there's going to be a file structure. And in that will be an RStudio project. And when you click on that, it's going to open up RStudio. It's going to create a project for you. And then from that point forward, it's only going to use wherever you put that RStudio projects. It's only going to use that directory downwards. So you don't have to specify let's see, you don't have to specify like your username and desktop and folder / subfolder / subfolder. So it does keep things kind of neat and tidy.
I guess what I mean, so I'm talking about when we're in RStudio Cloud, I'm interacting in a space where you've already installed certain packages, or you've installed certain packages for the course for us, and that applies to any project within the course? Or do I have a space where I'm installing my own packages within RStudio Cloud?
Rob, that's a good question. Anytime you create a new project in cloud, you will have to install those packages in that project. But for this one, the getting started, wherever I last leave it, I can pre-install all the packages for you, so you never have to deal with that. And then you're only running functions. And in some cases I will. Actually, let's scroll down because that's pertinent to what's next. Let's go to the packages section. And we're going to be loading a package actually called Tidyverse, which actually is a package that contains, Rob, you're probably familiar with this already from the readings. It contains a package that's full of other packages. So it's automatically going to load different packages for you that we'll be using throughout the entire course. It's going to load dplyr, which is for data wrangling. It's going to load ggplot, which is for communication and data exploration, for creating graphics. It's going to load packages for modeling and other things. So let's go ahead and actually install that. So let's run that and we'll install that package. And you should see it in your console start to run. RStudio Cloud's just a little bit slower than the desktop, so it may take a second before it actually starts installing. Oops, did I actually click it? There we go, sorry, now it's installing. And then once you've installed that, you'll see it actually installing down here. And you can see installing package. But yes, Rob, when you create your own project, you'll have to reinstall the packages. I'm actually doing it writing the code way to install packages. A lot of times, to be perfectly honest, I actually just click on the packages I want to install. And you can see which packages have already been installed for this particular project. And if it's not there, you can actually just install it right from here. So if I wanted to install the tidy text package, which we use for course, text mining course quite a bit, I could just go ahead and install that. And you can see it looks like the Tidyverse package and set of packages is already installed. And there's Tidyverse right there. If you click on these packages, Kate, you can also learn more about these packages. It'll take you to some of the documentation and some vignettes and user guides as well. The help tab over here is super useful. And in many cases too, they'll give you good examples of code that you can use. But we'll talk more about that in the course. So that should be installed now. I actually just installed the tidyverse. I installed the tidytext package by using the install button over here. And
was that tidy text, is that also one of the options in this user library, or that's pulling that from somewhere else?
let's see, that it's not in the tidyverse set of packages. So it's actually pulling it from a place called CRAN, which is, Rob, do you remember what that stands for? Something repository here, CRAN. Oh, Comprehensive R Archive Network. And this is where people officially submit packages to. And the number of packages for doing data analysis and other things in R just keeps growing every day exponentially. But these are the official versions. You can also get non-official versions, which are usually the more recent version of certain packages that are kind of being beta tested, or people decide not to put on CRAN. But we'll talk about that later in the course too. We'll mostly be using just official packages for the course. So I'm going back to cloud. We've installed the package, but we can't use it yet. In order to actually use the package, you have to load the package into your R environment. So we're going to go ahead and click on this line of code. This library function is used for loading the packages. So let's go ahead and run that. And you should see this output here. It tells you all the packages that it loaded for you. ggplot, which is used for data visualization, tidyr for cleaning data, readr, which we're going to use in just a second for reading data into R. Let's see, dplyr is another one we use quite a bit. That's for wrangling data and cleaning data and data transformation and creating data summaries. And stringer we used actually quite a bit last semester for our text mining course, and that's for cleaning text data. And text data is just often referred to as just strings. So strings of text, strings of characters. All right, so now that we have all of these installed, let's go ahead and we've got files over here. We have a data file and we have a CSV that contains basically like a grade book for students. So we're going to go ahead and load that. So let's read that into R. We're going to use a function called readCSV, which comes from that readr package that we just loaded. And it's specifically designed for reading CSV files, which is probably the most common data file format that we'll be using in this course, and that I just use in my professional work as well, because it's a simple text file that stores really easily and compact. There are functions for reading Excel files, and we'll learn about that a little bit later, because if you do data analysis, you probably use Excel quite a bit. So we'll learn about that as well. And we're going to read in that file, and we're going to save this data set that we've just read into. We're going to save it as just D, but you could name it anything you wanted to. Although don't name it something else differently for now, because we're going to use that data set that we call D. We're going to use that later on. So go ahead and run that code. And once you run it, you should see up there, you should see a data file now called D that contains 603 observations with 30 different variables. So that's a lot of information about each individual observation, which in this case, each observation is a student in a course. All right, we have some things that, but we're kind of running tight on time, where you would actually provide some information. These things are called your turns. So you'll see these in the guided walkthroughs, and that's a space for you to practice or reflect on what we just did. You don't have to do that now, though. This is not an official assignment. This is just getting you onboarded to what the assignments will look like. And in this case, you would just type your response here. So why do you think we included data before our before our file that we're loading? Kate, you want to take a stab at that one? Why do you think we included data here?
To direct where we want it to file it.
Yep, you got it. It's this file, the Sci Online Classes CSV file. It's in our data folder, so we have to make sure we tell it where it is. And there's a couple ways you can look at your data. We can just type the name that we called it. So go ahead and run that. And the nice thing about these R Markdown documents, these notebooks that we're doing, is you can view the data in the output right there in line. And we can look at the different variables. We can look at different rows. And if you wanted to as well, scroll down here a little bit. There's another way to look at your data too. There's a function called glimpse, which is really nice. And instead of showing your data like this, kind of like a spreadsheet, it will actually show you every single column in your data set. It will tell you what type, how that data is stored. So in this case, this is stored as a number that can include decimals. This one is just stored as a character, set of characters. So what we think of is just like names of things. And let's see, grade category, that's stored as logical. But you can see we have a lot of different variables included in this data set. Student ID, course ID, and these are fake student IDs. Course ID, total points possible, et cetera, et cetera. And this would be a chance for you to reflect on this. So you would type in for a normal assignment, you type in how many cases or observations you think are in this data set. Rob, actually, how many observations cases are in this data set?
603.
Yep, you got it. There's a couple ways we can find that out. It's right up here, so it's the number of rows. R tends to treat each row as an observation. In this case, our observation is a student. You can actually look up here in the environment too. It'll tell you how many observations. And we'll skip that. So now we're going to do a little bit of data wrangling. And we are going to, again, like, if you're new to R, don't feel like you have to like completely master, understand all of these things, because when we actually go through the real assignments and the guided walkthroughs, I'll provide a lot of elaboration on everything that we're doing. But in this case, we're going to use a function from one of the packages we just loaded. It's called select. And these functions, which are like commands or operations to tell the computer what to do and what to do with what and how to do it. This select function basically just selects the columns that you want from a data frame and only those columns. So I want a data frame, but I only want it to have student ID, total points possible, and total points earned. So I'm just going to select those three columns. We'll explain this a little bit later. We'll be using it more. This thing is called a pipe operator. And later on, like by the end of the course, when you're getting a little bit more comfortable writing code, here, what this does is it allows you to pass this data set and then string together a bunch of commands or functions that just build off one another. So you don't have to keep rewriting the same things over and over. And you'll see some examples of this when we get to Unit 1. So let's go ahead and run that and see what the output is. I'll let you guys run that first. And then tell me what you see. Hopefully what you see is what I anticipate you're supposed to see.
So I see like a little window or box that's 3 columns: student ID, total points possible, and total points earned.
Yep, perfect. That's exactly what you should see. And if we wanted to, actually in the your turn, I'll ask you to do this. You don't have to do it now. But if you wanted to add more columns, you just add a comma and then type the name of the column that we want to add to it. Let's say we wanted to add, I'm looking down here, the time spent column. So time spent. RStudio is really nice. It already knows that we have this data set called D in our environment. and it already knows what all the variables are as well. So when you're typing in here, it's going to try to predict what you want to include. So I actually want to include this time spent variable. So I'll just go ahead and click on that and it'll save me typing. So now when I run this, I'm going to see 4 variables in theory. That's funny. Let me refresh this. And blah, 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 blah. Glimpse. There we go. Let's try this again. And wrangling. Oops, did I pass it? There we go.
Sorry, are you rerunning the code chunks that were above it?
I sure am trying to right now.
And there's not a way to say run all chunks above or something like that?
There is. See this little arrow here, Rob? You can tell it.
There it is.
Yep. You got it. Let's see.
Those words must have popped up before, but I didn't notice.
That's so funny. Of course, I'm getting an error. Let me run through each of these. I'm going to do something too. I think what's going on a little bit is every time I'm saving this, it's actually refreshing it for your assignment. In theory, I shouldn't be in this. I should actually be logged in as a separate user, so I'm not messing with the original project that you guys are going to be modifying. But let me try this again. Go to, that's fine.
Yeah, now I'm getting errors too.
Oh. All right, that one works. Oh, this is a good example of troubleshooting. Error install packages. Interesting. Install tidyverse again.
I did not realize that the little icon for run all chunks above, I thought was a download.
Oh,
That was indicating downloading something. I see it's saying run everything down to this green line.
you'll use that quite a bit, actually, to be honest.
Okay.
Yep. Because sometimes you're going to start fresh, or the progress, you'll end up starting over, and then you know everything above that you want to run. This thing right now, installing tidyverse package, you don't want to do this like every single time we do this. Once it's installed, I would actually just delete that, because we don't want to reinstall the package every time we run our new script or run our code, because it's already in our environment. One thing you can do too is actually set this to this evaluate little argument here. It tells it to show the code, but don't actually run the code. So I'm going to tell it not to run that code anymore, because I don't want to reinstall tidyverse every single time I do this. So let's load tidyverse though. So far so good. Yep, that behaved as expected. Let's
why is it giving you those conflicts? And is that something you need to be worried about?
Very good question, Kate. For now, no, we don't need to be worried about these. In fact, it's normal. This is the thing about packages. Sometimes you would imagine with like 5,000 plus packages in CRAN, sometimes they use the same name for functions.
Okay.
In this case, dplyr has a function called filter, but stats, which is another package for doing statistics, also has a function called filter.
Okay.
So what it's going to do by default is every time you type filter, once you load the package, it's going to use the filter function from the most recently loaded package. But you can still use the stats filter package. You just need to tell it to run the filter function from the stats package. And you can do that by typing the name of the package before your function and the double colon there. And these, this is a good question too. The read CSV is a really useful function, and it's going to do its very, very best to try to guess what type of data is in each column. It's pretty good at guessing data that's a date. Excel does this too. So when you open up an Excel file, it's going to try to guess whether it's a number or whether it's text or whether it's a date or whether it's currency. Read CSV tries to do the same thing, and it will automatically set things as certain data types. So semester it's set as a character, so just the name of something. Section it's set as a character. This one it's set as a logical, and I think that's because that's actually just empty, so it's all null values. Gender it's set as a character as well. If we wanted to recode gender as like 1 for male, 2 for female, then we could recode it and change it from a character into a just a factor or a number. So far so good. Let me run this. Cannot open file. Oh goodness. Run this. I'm kind of curious. Let me type D in here. There we go. That's bizarre. So D's in the environment. I can see it down here. And I still got D up there. So thanks you two for being patient. I'm gonna go back here. So
I'm actually finding your patience with this remarkable. Like if I was encountering this, I'd be getting so frustrated. Like, what is going on?
oh, you'll patience is a virtue when you're working with R or Stata or Python or any sort of programming environment. Google's going to become one of your best friends too, because most of the time, if you copy and paste the errors into Google, you are not the first person to uncover that type of error, and there's probably going to be a solution on Stack Overflow or some site that's going to have an answer for you. Okay, doing good so far. Let's run this glimpse again. Your turn. Let's do some wrangling. Okay, fingers crossed. There we go. So I added the time spent variable. So now I see those 3 variables that we had before, and there's the time spent one there too. And the DBL, that's a number type, and it just means it can include decimals. So let's see. There's another way you can view data. This is actually, I use this quite a bit. There's 2 ways you can do this. You can type view, which is your sort of view function for viewing your data. And it's actually going to pop up your data set up here in a window. And then you can really kind of browse through your entire data set, just like you would in Excel in a spreadsheet. And what's nice about this too, is you can do some filtering. So if I wanted to add filters and I only wanted, let's say I just wanted 1 course. So I could just say, type in the name of that course. Here, I'll just copy it. And then it would only show me all the students from that course, and that's it. So the view is a nice function, and this is not the only place you can do it. If you see over here in the corner, there's, oh, you know what? I'm sorry, hold on. Give me 1 second. I actually have a 12 o'clock meeting. I'm going to tell them I'm running late. With my class and running late. All right, sorry about that. So I can select those. There's another useful function called filter. And this is kind of like the select function where we just picked rows that we wanted. You will use this function a lot too. This actually selects the rows instead of the columns. It's called a filter function. And we can specify a whole different things we'd want to filter on. But let's say we wanted to take our D data set, our student data set, and we wanted to filter it by this column, which is their final course grade. And let's say we only wanted students who have a course grade that's greater than 70. So anybody that's a C or above. And then it will return a data set to us that only includes the students with a 70% or higher. And then there's a your turn here. So if you wanted to modify it and change it to filter it another way, you can do that. We have an arrange function. I'm sorry, I'm running a little low on time. I bought myself a little time with my next meeting, but I'm going to have to hop off in just a little bit. The instructions are pretty thorough though, so I would go through this on your own. And what I'm going to do too is when I'm all done with this, Robin K, I'm actually going to go ahead and restart R and clear all of this output. So it shouldn't mess up your version. Because I think every time that I make a change here, it's going to try to make a change on your final version. So that's something next time I do, I'll probably log in as my fake student profile that I have on here, and then do it through that. So I'm not modifying the original version. There's some fun things with creating some basic charts as well. And we are going to focus in this course just on making, oops, yeah, I think I'm missing something from above. We're going to focus, we're going to focus in this course just on making charts specific to network data. And you can change color, things like that. And then like I said, we won't do much modeling in this course. This is just an example of running a very basic linear regression model to try to predict course grades based on how much time they spent in this particular course. And if you run that, you'll be able to see that time spent was a significant predictor of course grades. Specifically that roughly, if they spent about 40 hours in the course, we could kind of predict their grade to be about 74% in this course. Again, you don't need a ton of stats background or really any stats background for this course. And we won't do much modeling in this course. We're going to focus primarily on putting together network data, visualizing it, and then calculating some basic but important network statistics. Measures of centrality, which you might have read about already in the course reading, whole network measures like the density of a network, how connected people are in a network, and things like that. And then when you're all done, what you'll want to do is take a preview of this. There we go. Sorry, I had a pop-up blocker there. Let me actually show you something really quick. There's a little gear up here, and you can tell it to open in a new window, like a new browser window, or you can tell it, and I think Kate did this for you, you can tell it to open up in a viewer pane as well. So when I click the preview button, it'll open up here into my little viewer pane. And then I can see what this looks like when I publish this as a web page or a HTML document. And this is what it's going to look like when it's nice and cleaned up and ready to share with somebody. What you'll see about this, one of the nice things about using R and R Markdown is that you can create basically interactive documents on a web page. So I can include a table, but unlike with a PDF where I'd include an appendix and then I'd have like a table that's like 3 or 4 pages long so they can see all the data, I can actually just publish this to a web page and then they can click through all the data and see. And later in the course, we'll learn about other really, really nice interactive data tables that we can include in a website that really allows for much more interactivity for someone to be able to explore the data too. You'll see all your outputs when you publish it. And yeah, it creates a really nice document. Right now, I'm just previewing it, but when I'm ready to actually publish it, I can do something called knitting it. And I'm going to actually knit it and turn it into an HTML web page. And then we can share this web page in a number of different places. So I'm going to click knit, and it is going to turn my project file into an actual web page. And if I wanted to, oh no, am I seriously getting an error for this? Oh, might still be processing. Let me wait.
I thought I had an error with it and I just did that and then it eventually worked.
And click on that. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it just wasn't showing up in the viewer for some reason. And there's my final HTML web page. So do me both a favor if you have some time within the next week. I'm going to clear everything. I'm going to restart. I'm going to get rid of all of this output. I'm going to restore the environment from scratch. I'm going to clean everything out of here. Yes, I'm going to get rid of everything here. And I'm going to start this over as if it's a brand new, fresh assignment. And if you have time, if you can walk through this independently and let me know if you encounter any errors or issues on your end as well. So I'm going to not save that. I don't want that. And I'm going to set this up. Kate, thanks for earlier. I'm going to make sure I'm at the actual project main directory that has all the files and folders. I'm going to get rid of these HTML files because you'll be creating them yourselves. So I'm going to delete those. And then I'm going to save this. And I'm actually going to clear the console too. See this little broom over here? I'm going to get rid of all of that. And now when I exit out of this, for anybody else, it should start up as a brand new fresh project. So when Peter comes into this later, it should be nice and clean for him. I'm going to go back here. And Rob and Kate, I can see that you've started these projects already. So if you have some time, this is an optional assignment, it's not required, but run through this independently and let me know if you run into any issues, because this will help me for the next time, because this is the first time I'm using RStudio Cloud with a class. And also we're going to be using it for Summer Institute with faculty from different universities across the country that are going to be coming here, and we'll be trying to use this with them too. So this will help save some embarrassing pauses, hopefully, knock on wood. All right, Kate and Rob, thanks so much. And if it's okay with you, I'm gonna put this video on our Moodle website too for Peter so he can review this later. All right, take care, you two.